Why do most language learners quit before becoming fluent? And how can a 5,000-year-old technique change everything? Have you ever spent countless hours memorizing vocabulary lists only to find yourself at a loss for words when trying to speak? Or perhaps you've mastered every grammar rule in the textbook, yet still struggle to understand native speakers. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone, and there's a fascinating scientific reason why traditional language learning often fails us. Welcome back to LMJ English, where we transform frustration into fluency. I'm thrilled to share with you today the revolutionary approach that's changing how millions around the world are mastering new languages. The secret? It's not about more studying, it's about better storytelling. Before we dive into this game-changing method, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest insights on language. Learning breakthroughs. Your journey to effortless communication starts right now, and I promise this approach might just change everything you thought you knew about learning a new language. The challenges of traditional language learning. Remember those endless vocabulary drills in school? The repetitive grammar exercises that seemed disconnected from real conversation? For decades, traditional language education has followed a predictable formula. Memorize vocabulary lists, study grammar rules, and complete structured exercises. While this approach has produced generations of students who can conjugate verbs and pass written exams, it has largely failed to create confident, fluent speakers. The human brain simply isn't wired to learn languages through disconnected lists and abstract rules. When faced with a barrage of isolated vocabulary words or complex grammatical concepts without meaningful context, our brains struggle to form lasting neural connections. This is why so many language learners experience vocabulary leak, the frustrating phenomenon where words seem to disappear from memory almost as quickly as they're learned. Traditional methods also create an artificial separation between language learning and language use. In classrooms worldwide, students spend years studying a language before they're considered ready to actually use it. This approach ignores a fundamental truth about language acquisition. We learn to communicate by communicating, not by preparing to communicate. The result? Students who can ace grammar tests but freeze in real conversations. Perhaps most damaging is the emotional impact of traditional language education. By emphasizing correctness over communication and focusing on errors rather than progress, conventional methods often generate anxiety, self-consciousness, and fear of judgment. Research has consistently shown that these negative emotional states create significant barriers to language acquisition by activating the brain's stress response, which inhibits the cognitive processes essential for learning. The statistics tell a sobering story. Despite years of mandatory language education in schools worldwide, proficiency rates remain dismally low. In the United States, for example, less than 1% of adults who studied a foreign language in traditional classroom settings reach functional fluency. This isn't a reflection of student ability or effort. It's evidence of a fundamentally flawed approach to language education, the rise of immersive storytelling. Imagine learning a language not through textbooks and drills, but by following a captivating detective, solving mysteries in Paris, or joining a family's adventures as they navigate life in Tokyo. This is the essence of immersive storytelling. For language learning, an approach that leverages the brain's natural affinity for narrative to make language acquisition both more effective and more enjoyable. The science behind this approach is compelling. Our brains are literally hardwired for stories. From the earliest human societies to the digital age, storytelling has been our primary method for sharing information, creating meaning, and connecting with others. When we engage with a story, our brains process language differently than when we study isolated vocabulary or grammar rules. Functional MRI studies show that stories activate multiple brain regions simultaneously, creating rich neural networks that enhance both comprehension and retention. Leading language learning platforms have embraced this science with remarkable results. Duolingo Stories, for example, combines short, engaging narratives with interactive elements that check comprehension while maintaining immersion. Story Learning, founded by Polyglot Ollie Richards, builds entire language courses around graduated stories that grow in complexity as learners progress. ImmerseMe uses virtual reality technology to place learners in story-based scenarios, where they must use the target language to progress. What makes these approaches so effective is their ability to create emotional connections to the language. When we follow characters through challenges, victories, and discoveries, we develop emotional investment in their journeys. This emotional engagement triggers the release of neurochemicals like dopamine, associated with pleasure and reward, and oxytocin, associated with bonding and empathy, which significantly enhance memory formation and recall. Consider the difference between learning the French phrase "Je suis désolé," I'm sorry, from a vocabulary list, versus encountering it in a story where a character accidentally breaks a family heirloom and must apologize. In the latter scenario, the phrase becomes connected to a visual scene, emotional context, and narrative consequence. These connections create multiple pathways for recall, making the language element far more memorable and accessible in future situations. The storytelling approach also naturally integrates cultural elements that are often missing from traditional language education. Through characters, settings, and situations, learners absorb cultural values, social norms, and communication patterns alongside vocabulary and grammar. This integration helps bridge the gap between linguistic competence, knowing the rules of a language, and communicative competence, knowing how to use language appropriately in different contexts. The science behind storytelling and language learning. The effectiveness of storytelling in language acquisition isn't just intuitive. It's backed by substantial research across neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and education. This growing body of evidence reveals precisely why narrative-based approaches produce better results than traditional methods. Neuroimaging studies have transformed our understanding of how the brain processes stories. When we encounter isolated vocabulary or grammar rules, activity is largely confined to Wernicke's and Broca's areas, the classical language centers of the brain. But when we engage with a story, something remarkable happens. Our entire brain lights up. The motor cortex activates when characters perform physical actions. The sensory cortex engages when descriptions include sensory details. The limbic system, our emotional brain, responds to characters' feelings and conflicts. This whole brain engagement creates what neuroscientists call neural coupling, a phenomenon where the listener's or reader's brain activity mirrors the patterns of the storyteller's brain. This synchronization helps explain why information delivered through stories is understood more thoroughly and remembered more accurately than information presented as disconnected facts. Memory research provides further evidence for storytelling's effectiveness. Studies consistently show that information embedded in narratives is retained at significantly higher rates than information presented in lists or abstract explanations. In one notable experiment, students remembered approximately 50% more information when it was presented in story format compared to traditional educational methods. The mechanisms behind this enhanced retention are multifaceted. First, stories provide rich contextual frameworks that help the brain organize and store new information. Rather than trying to memorize isolated vocabulary words, learners encounter these words as integral parts of meaningful scenarios, creating natural associations that serve as memory hooks. Second, stories engage multiple memory systems simultaneously. Episodic memory, which records experiences and events, semantic memory, which stores facts and concepts, and procedural memory, which preserves skills and habits, all activate during story processing, creating redundant storage that enhances recall. Third, the emotional components of storytelling significantly boost memory formation. Research in cognitive neuroscience has demonstrated that emotionally charged information receives preferential processing in the brain, leading to stronger and more accessible memories. When language elements are connected to characters we care about or situations that evoke emotional responses, they become more salient and memorable. The role of empathy in language acquisition represents another fascinating dimension of storytelling's impact. When we identify with characters in a story, we temporarily adopt their perspective, experiencing events through their eyes. This perspective-taking activates mirror neurons, brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that action. These neurons play a crucial role in both language acquisition and cultural understanding by helping us internalize patterns of speech and behavior. Most remarkable is how storytelling approaches mirror the natural process through which we all acquired our first language. Children don't learn their mother tongue through vocabulary lists and grammar rules. They learn it through stories, conversations, and meaningful interactions. By aligning second language acquisition with these natural processes, storytelling methods tap into the brain's innate language learning capacities, making the learning process more intuitive and effective. Exploring the future of language learning. The intersection of storytelling with emerging technologies is opening unprecedented possibilities for language education. As we look to the future, three major developments stand poised to transform how we acquire new languages. Adaptive storytelling. Systems, virtual reality immersion, and AI-powered personalization. Adaptive storytelling represents a radical departure from the linear narratives of traditional education. Unlike conventional textbooks or even standard digital courses that present the same content to every learner, adaptive systems continuously analyze individual performance data to tailor stories to each person's needs, interests, and learning patterns. Platforms like Linguist and Rosetta Stone are already implementing early versions of this technology, using algorithms to adjust vocabulary difficulty and grammar complexity based on user responses. As these systems evolve, they will increasingly resemble choose-your-own-adventure experiences, where the narrative branches in response to learner choices and performance, struggling with past tense verbs. The system might extend a story segment that naturally incorporates those forms. Already comfortable with food vocabulary, the story might shift to challenge you with new semantic domains. This responsive approach ensures that learners always operate in what psychologist Lev Vygotsky called the zone of proximal development, the sweet spot where material is challenging enough to promote growth, but not so difficult as to cause frustration. virtual reality, VR, and augmented reality. AR technologies are taking immersive storytelling to extraordinary new levels. Platforms like Immersive and Mondly VR transport learners to virtual environments where they can interact with characters and scenarios in the target language. Instead of merely reading about ordering coffee in Spanish, learners can virtually step into a cafe in Madrid, engage with a barista, and practice the interaction in a multisensory environment that mimics real-world conditions. The impact of spatial learning on language acquisition is particularly significant. When vocabulary and phrases are associated with specific locations and physical movements, they create what memory researchers call embodied cognition, learning that's connected to physical experience. Studies show that this type of spatially anchored learning produces dramatically stronger retention than traditional methods. Cultural immersion, traditionally available only through travel or living abroad, becomes accessible to all learners through these technologies. VR environments can recreate the subtle nonverbal communication cues, environmental contexts, and cultural nuances that are essential for authentic language use, but nearly impossible to convey through conventional teaching materials. Artificial intelligence is perhaps the most transformative force in the future of language education. AI-powered language learning systems can provide the kind of personalized attention and feedback that was once available only through one-on-one tutoring. Advanced speech recognition algorithms can analyze pronunciation with unprecedented precision, offering targeted guidance for improvement. Natural language processing enables AI systems to engage in increasingly authentic conversations, giving learners safe opportunities to practice before navigating real-world interactions. Predictive analytics represents a particularly promising application of AI in language education. By analyzing patterns in learning data, these systems can identify potential obstacles before they become problems. If an AI detects that a learner consistently struggles with a particular sound combination or grammatical structure, it can proactively introduce stories and activities that provide additional practice with these elements, preventing the formation of fossilized errors that become difficult to correct later. As these technologies converge, we're moving toward a future where language learning becomes an adaptive, personalized journey through interconnected stories that respond to individual needs, interests, and goals. This approach not only maximizes efficiency, but transforms the emotional experience of language learning from one of stress and struggle to one of discovery and delight. A call to action: embrace the power of storytelling. The evidence is clear. Storytelling transforms language learning from a tedious academic exercise into an engaging, effective, and enjoyable journey. But how can you, as an individual learner, harness this power to revolutionize your own language learning experience? Let me share some practical steps to get started. Begin by incorporating simple storytelling elements into your existing routine. If you're currently using vocabulary apps or flashcards, try organizing words into mini-narratives rather than isolated lists. Instead of memorizing apple, banana, orange, store, buy, create a simple story. I went to the store to buy apples, bananas, and oranges. This small change activates more regions of your brain and creates contextual connections that enhance retention. Graded readers offer an accessible entry point for story-based learning at any level. These specially designed books present engaging narratives using controlled vocabulary and grammatical structures, appropriate for different proficiency levels. Start with stories at or slightly above your current level. You should be able to understand about 80% of the content without a dictionary. This comprehensible input zone, as linguist Stephen Krashen calls it, is where optimal language acquisition occurs. Digital platforms have made immersive storytelling more accessible than ever. Duolingo Stories, Bilinguap, and LingQ offer free or affordable starting options with engaging narrative content for multiple languages and proficiency levels. Podcasts like Coffee Break Languages and News in Slow blend storytelling with current events and cultural insights, creating compelling listening experiences that build comprehension skills. For visual learners, YouTube channels like Easy, Languages and Dreaming Spanish offer authentic street interviews and narrative content with subtitles, providing a window into both the language and culture of native speakers. Netflix and other streaming services now offer extensive international content that can be viewed with subtitles in either your native language or the target language, depending on your current level. As you engage with these resources, remember that consistency matters more than quantity. 15 minutes of daily story immersion will yield better results than occasional marathon sessions. Create a sustainable routine that incorporates different storytelling formats, perhaps audio stories during your commute, reading before bed, and interactive digital content on weekends. Track your progress, not by vocabulary counts or grammar, rules mastered, but by your evolving relationship with stories in your target language. Celebrate milestones like understanding your first joke, following a plot without translation, or feeling emotional resonance with characters. These experiences signal deeper, more meaningful language acquisition than any test score. When you're ready to take your learning to the next level, consider joining or creating a language exchange focused on storytelling. Platforms like Tandem and HelloTalk connect language learners worldwide, many of whom are eager to share stories from their cultures and help you craft your own narratives in their language. This social dimension adds accountability, authenticity, and cultural context to your learning journey. The transformation from traditional language education to story-based learning represents more than just a methodological shift. It's a philosophical reimagining of what language acquisition can and should be. By embracing storytelling, we recognize that languages aren't academic subjects to be studied in isolation, but living bridges to new cultures, perspectives, and human connections. As neuroscientist Uri Hassan has observed, a story is the only way to activate parts in the brain so that a listener turns the story into their own idea and experience. Through stories, language ceases to be foreign and becomes part of our own lived experience. And isn't that the true measure of language acquisition? Your journey toward fluency begins with a single story. Take that first step today and discover how the ancient art of storytelling can unlock the future of language learning. As we come to the end of our exploration into the transformative power of storytelling in language learning, I hope you're feeling inspired to reimagine your own language journey. Whether you're just beginning or have been studying for years, incorporating stories into your practice can revitalize your progress and reconnect you with the joy of learning. If you found value in these insights, please take a moment to hit the like button and share this video with fellow language enthusiasts who might benefit from this approach. Your support helps us continue creating evidence-based content that empowers language learners worldwide. I'd love to hear about your experiences with story-based language learning. Drop a comment below sharing your favorite resources, successes, or questions. Your insights might be exactly what another learner needs to hear. Don't forget to subscribe to LMJ English and turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos on innovative language learning techniques. Until next time, happy storytelling, and remember, your next language breakthrough might be just one story away. Vocabulary list: Immersive, ADJ. Completely involving or engaging all of your attention or energy. Example: immersive storytelling. Creates a learning environment where you forget you're studying. Traditional ADJ. Following or conforming to past customs or methods. Example: traditional language classes focus heavily on grammar rules and vocabulary lists. Acquisition, noun. The process of learning or developing a skill. Example: language acquisition happens naturally when we engage with compelling stories. Retention, samust. The ability to keep something in your memory. Example: emotional stories significantly improve vocabulary retention. Contextual, ADJ, relating to or determined by the context. Example: contextual learning helps students understand how words are used in real situations. Engagement, noun. Emotional involvement or commitment. Example: student engagement increases dramatically with storytelling techniques. Narrative, noun. A spoken or written account of connected events. A story. Example: following a narrative helps learners remember vocabulary in context. Cognitive, ADJ. Relating to the mental processes of perception, memory, judgment, and reasoning. Example: stories activate multiple cognitive processes simultaneously. Virtual reality, noun. Computer-generated simulation of a three-dimensional environment. Example: virtual reality creates immersive language learning experiences without travel. Adaptive, ADJ, characterized by or showing adaptation, making suitable adjustments to new conditions. Example: adaptive storytelling systems personalize content based on learner performance. Proficiency, noun. A high degree of skill or expertise. Example: story-based approaches lead to greater speaking proficiency than traditional methods. Neural, ADJ. Relating to nerves or the nervous system. Example: stories create stronger neural connections for language elements. Immersion, noun. Deep mental involvement in something. Example: language immersion through stories accelerates fluency development. Personalized, ADJ, designed or produced to meet someone's individual requirements. Example: AI enables personalized learning experiences, tailored to each student's needs. Fluency, noun. The ability to express oneself easily and articulately. Example: the ultimate goal of language learning is achieving conversational fluency. Integration, noun. The act of combining or adding parts to make a unified whole. Example: the integration of cultural elements into stories enhances understanding. Conventional, ADJ, based on or in accordance with what is generally done or believed. Example: conventional teaching methods often prioritize rules over communication. Methodology, noun. A system of methods used in a particular area of study or activity. Example: this innovative methodology transforms how languages are taught and learned. Authentic, ADJ. Of undisputed origin and not a copy. Genuine. Example: stories provide authentic language usage in meaningful contexts. Transformative, ADJ. Causing a marked change in someone or something. Example: story-based learning, has a transformative effect on language acquisition speed and enjoyment.